It is here, among the high arches of the earth's crust, that they are born. In these places, frigid and remote, barriers to moisture from the North Pacific. During the past 2 million years, their kind has dominated nearly 1/3 of the total land area of this planet. Humans have called them glaciers. They are great rivers of ice, and their movement contains the power to carve huge valleys. As they move, they speak to us with the sounds of their labor. These are the sounds of their life and their death. Snowflakes, the frozen breath of the ocean from which glaciers are created. They are the first step in the process of continual change, continual beginnings. Storm after storm, layer by layer, the flakes accumulate. Time and pressure fuse them together, compressing the snow into dense, jewel-like ice. Ice that is heavier than that formed in any other way. Under the increasing weight of each new snow, the ice moves down slope like a river, forming a flowing sheet hundreds or even thousands of feet thick. In the Chugach Mountains of south-central Alaska, vast rivers of ice have flowed through the course of many ice ages. In recent geologic times, much of this area was covered by glacial ice half a mile thick. Today, these mountains are still the domain of active glaciers. About 1/3 of the Chugach National Forest is still under the domination of moving ice. In the tradition of their immense ancestors, these glaciers are master sculptors of the landscape, living symbols of the forces of change and transformation. They return to the sea from which they came, revealing the valleys, fjords, and inlets that are the legacy of their reign. At the end of a glacier, ice breaks off and melts. This may happen faster than the glacier's movement as it flows down the valley. The glacier gets smaller. Because glaciers are slowly shrinking throughout the northern hemisphere, they tell us of a warming trend in the Earth's atmosphere so slight that it can be detected in no other way. The glaciers are perhaps a more sensitive detector of long-term changes in the climate than any man-made measuring device. The glacier surface is a surreal landscape of icy spires and crevasses so deep that a 10-story building could be hidden within them. These are the facial expressions of the tremendous pressure and stress within a glacier as it moves over the uneven terrain, separating, fusing, splitting, recombining. The movement of a glacier is imperceptible to our normal vision. Feet per day is the usual speed of travel for a glacier. Nearby, its monstrous weight can be heard grinding across the land. These are the sounds of a battle between rock and ice. The voices of a struggle nearly as ancient as the earth itself. The exposed bedrock over which the glacier once passed gives mute evidence of the power of the moving ice, leaving only a polished surface in places. As the glacier transforms the land beneath it, the ice itself is eroding away on the front of the glacier, yielding to the forces of sunlight and warmer temperatures. The melting ice creates a medley of voices. Meltwater flows under and through the glaciers, through winding channels, creating caves of exquisite architecture and unfamiliar beauty. Although most plants and animals depend on the retreat of glaciers to make habitat available to them, there is one creature whose life unfolds on the snow itself. As the sun sets, one of the most uniquely adapted forms of life in this cold environment slowly prepares to make an appearance. The ice worm is a creature of such myth and mystery that many people do not believe in its existence. They live between ice crystals near the surface of the glacier, emerging to the open air to feed on algae and pollen carried by the wind. It is known that they are related to earthworms, but many details of their existence remain a mystery. The landscape unveiled by the retreat of a glacier is nearly as harsh as the ice itself. It will, however, take only a few years for the first plants to inhabit this wasteland of barren rock. Their existence creates a thin veneer of soil, a carpet of nourishment in which other plants soon flourish. With the advancement of time, the bleak landscape is transformed by an unfolding parade of new voices. Life expands to fill the void left by the retreating glaciers, perhaps reiterating an old rule that nature abhors a vacuum. In the high country where glaciers remain a recent memory, Dall sheep lambs frolic around and on the remnants of old glaciers. The Dall sheep live here in these same high arches of the earth's crust near the glaciers. They live here throughout the entire year, able to survive on the higher slopes where the winter winds will clear away the snow from some ridges. The lambs face the first year of their life with a natural exuberance. Energy flows through them as life itself flows from generation to generation. Created by the melting of snow and glacier, life flooded into the marsh, cradle and nursery for a myriad of species. Trumpeter swans begin their spring migration, passing through southeastern Alaska on their way to the Arctic tundra. Arctic terns prepare to raise their families as geese, ducks, and grebes settle in for the summer. As distant glaciers feed the marsh, a new generation of young emerges to begin life's oldest journey of discovery. Green forests invaded the valleys left by the retreating glaciers. They became home to new forms of life and filtered meltwater streams which became host to other species. Salmon return every year to these glacial gravels to deposit the seed of the next generation. It is here that these adult salmon begin their life's journey, and here it will end. It is common to see grizzly bears fishing for salmon, but black bears have learned to use this source of food also, even though it is rare to see them like this. As the salmon follow their primal calling to the streams of their birth, they provide life for the bear and the eagle. The wildlife has spread far from the glaciers, but sometimes they subsist almost within the very shadow of the glacier itself, its voice a familiar sound in their daily lives. The rich land and forests left behind by the diminishing glaciers have also echoed to the sound of human voices. For thousands of years, native cultures lived along the glacial rivers and open coastlines, sustained by an abundant supply of fish and wildlife. These early people left few marks upon the land. Only a few tools and the artifacts of their religion remain. The depression where they built a house 6,000 years ago is almost obscured by the encroaching forest. The forest and the salmon support a healthy population of bald eagles today, and the waters along the coast are home to a recovering colony of sea otters. Russian fur traders came to hunt the sea otters in the middle of the 18th century. They almost wiped out the otters, along with sea lions, which are recovering today. The Russian influence changed the native culture and altered a way of life forever. Prospectors followed the creeks and canyons which were left behind by the retreating glaciers, looking for quick wealth, for easy riches. And sometimes they found it, but often the wealth they left behind in their machinery and labor was worth more than the gold they found. The relics of their labor reached into the remotest parts of the landscape. Tales of endless wealth gave way to disappointment for most. In a few years, the gold rush ended, and the land was abandoned, along with their claims and their dreams. After the turn of the century, men returned to expand their search for valuable metals with the more sophisticated technology of steam locomotives. They bravely pushed through an inhospitable environment and built monuments to their energy and daring, like the $1 Million Bridge across the Copper River. Today, the forest speaks to us still, reminding us of our past, the natural world, and perhaps a chance to know ourselves. A place to satisfy a deeply felt need for wilderness, to see if one can spend some time in his own company. These streams still issue their secret call to the salmon to return, a call that we cannot hear or understand, but their return to these glacial streams each year provide a living for many Alaskans. And even today, miners still search the forest for precious minerals, sometimes scoured from the earth by the work of ancient glaciers. The forest continues to sustain a multitude of creatures who depend on it, supplying all their needs. As the summer days begin to grow shorter, the red squirrel feels an inner need to store some food. He begins the process of collecting his favorite seeds, sending a harvest to the ground. He will store the spruce cones in secret places near his nest, and with any luck at all, perhaps he can remember where some of those caches are hidden. In any case, he depends on himself for survival. Summer gradually blends into autumn. The brighter colors seem to signal an end to the summer labors of the forest. There are other creatures preparing for winter also. During the summer months, beavers have plenty of green food, but now they expend tremendous energy in cutting and storing little branches for their winter food supply. They will be forced to live on the bark of these branches through the winter, which they preserve by hiding them underwater. They anchor them in the mud on the bottom of the pond, so the bark can be eaten under the ice during the winter months. The dramatic voices of the glacier have disappeared in much of Alaska, but the drama still remains. A female grizzly tests the air. She detects the presence of another bear. The chase may continue for over an hour. This female has no tolerance for bears in her territory because of her cubs. Another bear is perhaps the most dangerous threat that her cubs face. Now they fill their time with feeding, grazing throughout the day and for much of the night. The adult bear is anxious to become as fat as possible in order to survive the coming winter, and also because she still suckles the cubs from time to time. The cubs are slowly gaining their independence, but it is a slow process for animals which are as advanced as bears. They have much to learn, and they still depend on mother for some of their nourishment. These feeding periods have grown increasingly short and sometimes leave the cubs frustrated. They're forced to return to their grazing. They can sense the approaching winter. The seasons transition. The mink will now have to contend with the snow in his search for food. But he knows how to survive here, as does the moose. They both live in valleys that still contain glaciers. In these secluded mountain valleys, moose may find an isolated retreat where they can carry out the patterns and impulses of their procreation. And sometimes they may remind us of ourselves as they react to each other in ways that seem almost human-like romantic moods. During the mating season, it's common for male moose to battle each other for the right to mate. But as that season draws to a close, male and female pairs may separate themselves from others of their kind and experience a brief private existence. Whether or not there is romance, their companionship is real and undeniable as they respond to their own inner voices. It is these same isolated valleys that the grizzly searches for, searching perhaps for a retreat from humans, craving nothing more than to be left alone and to attend to the welfare of her cubs. The cubs are testing the ambivalent feelings of their budding independence, so they lag far behind on occasion. But their insecurity prompts them to try to keep their mother in sight. The female is intent on finding any remaining food before entering her den for the winter. But the cubs, as typical youngsters perhaps, are easily distracted. When mom is not visible, the cubs suddenly become very tense until she is spotted again. Their time grows short. The new snows limit access to their food, making grazing difficult. They must find new dens soon. The winds of winter are still an inescapable voice of the north. They continue to bear moisture from the great oceans and deposit it as snow on all the life forms that follow in the bed of ancient glaciers. The snowfalls of southeastern Alaska can accumulate as much as 150 feet in a year in some places. So still today, this snow continues to compact into titanic glaciers, rivers of ice, born of snow. They are sculpting tools and evolution's continuing art of creation. Millions of acres have emerged from their domain as the rugged and beautiful landscape that we experience today. Millions of acres are still covered beneath them. Works in progress behind a veil of ice. They may open more land for future generations. Or they could once again envelop much of the continent in crushing ice. In either case, there is still a powerful voice in this rugged land. The history of our relationship with this landscape is but an instant compared to the long evolution of the land itself. Evolution guided by the forces of wind and water, fire and ice. It continues to be a land profoundly influenced by the existence of glaciers. Voices from the ice. The Arctic coast of Alaska. Time passes quietly here. The years falling lightly as the snow. The presence of man, too, has touched lightly. And partly for this reason, the wandering birds have come here to nest and raise their young. The birds also come because the land, though it does not show promise now, will yield a harvest of food on which these birds thrive. Now they come in anticipation of spring, even though it is now June. Winter seems to hold on. It is a contest that may be symbolic. Man, too, wants to use this land, so the birds may have to contend with more than just the weather. 70 miles from Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, in the midst of a roadless wilderness, we shall observe the birds and animals of the far north during one Arctic summer. Now, in June, the birds are establishing territories and trying to attract a mate. All across the tundra, a yearly phenomenon is repeated as living things prepare for the continuation of their kind. They have only a few precious weeks. If nesting fails the first time, there will be no second chance. As it does each year, the persistent sun softens the winter snowpack. Slowly at first, it yields to the increasing warmth. 24 hours of sunlight accelerates the pace. By definition, the tundra is an arid region, a desert with less than 10 inches of average precipitation a year. But this area has permanently frozen ground just beneath the surface, which prevents the water from soaking into the soil, and the melting snow will flow into thousands of ponds and lakes that dot the tundra, and into the Arctic Ocean. One by one, the whistling swans return from their wintering grounds to rejoin the hibernators who remained all winter. Many have come 3,000 miles from Delaware and North Carolina to perform a spring ritual which extends back through vast reaches of time. Clinging to the last patches of snow, the willow ptarmigan tries to remain unnoticed. He is a favorite food of foxes, and because he dislikes flying, spends much of his time simply trying to stay out of sight. He is one of the few birds that spends the winter on the tundra, depending on the sweeping wind to clear the snow away from the tiny willows on which he feeds. But for now, he wishes to remain out of sight of any passing foxes. The willow catkins have begun to develop now, but growth is slow where summer is short, only a few inches high. This willow may be as much as 100 years old. The return of the sun will pour life into this barren land, a land that gives the appearance of drabness. But there are over 500 species of flowering plants here, and the radiant sun will send the Arctic flowers pulsing into life, transformed for a brief moment of delicate beauty. The strange, somewhat irregular sound of old squaw ducks signal that a pair have claimed this pond as their territory, where they feed on small crustaceans and aquatic insects from the bottom. The male will defend this territory from other old squaws, which he considers trespassers. This aggressive behavior serves to spread the breeding ducks throughout the tundra and to aid success in raising their young. This pair will require the food that this pond provides to meet their energy needs. The male is as jealous of his mate as he is of his pond, and feels uncomfortable until she is by his side once more. The female will make her nest nearby, and her mate will leave to join flocks of other males until late summer, in time for fall migration. No trees grow on the tundra, yet along the Arctic coast of Alaska lies a line of driftwood, brought here from hundreds of miles away by the ocean currents. The wood has come from the interior of Canada, down the Mackenzie River to the Arctic Sea, and washed ashore by storm tides all across the northern coast. Here it rests, providing shelter for some birds and animals, supporting a rich growth of lichens. Decay is slow in this environment, and some pieces are hundreds of years old. Their weathered patterns a natural part of the Arctic tundra, even though no trees have ever grown here.
The brown lemming, at 3 ounces, is one of the smallest animals of the tundra. He will eat almost anything that is vegetable matter, and in the process returns it to enrich the soil much more quickly than if it were allowed to decay naturally. Foxes, jaegers, hawks, owls, all predators hunt him, so he's understandably nervous. In some years, thousands of lemmings seem to carpet the tundra, but in other years the little rodents are scattered, solitary wanderers. He swims well, but he has a low tolerance for cold, even though lemmings are inhabitants of the Arctic. Her instinct is to lure him away, but when this fails, and thoroughly upset, she pretends to feed. She doesn't know what else to do. But she is drawn irresistibly back to the eggs and the life they contain. A life which depends on her for its continuance. In any natural system, the death of one animal may benefit others. This caribou has provided food for foxes and ravens, and now its bones will provide calcium for the lemming. But it is the tundra itself which will finally benefit by the death of the caribou. In the end, the tundra will receive back all life which it has nurtured, stimulating its nitrogen-poor soil to richer growth, benefiting the generations of animals to follow in an endless cycle. For the buff-breasted sandpiper, as with all birds, attracting a mate is serious business. But he seems to attack the problem with irrepressible enthusiasm. Now, in mid-June, the nesting season is well underway, and the dunlin, like most Arctic birds, can virtually disappear when sitting on her nest. The female eider will incubate her eggs almost continuously, without feeding, until the eggs hatch, a period of 28 to 30 days. Her energy reserves become so low that eiders have been known to die on the nest in a severe summer storm. At the phalarope's nest, it's the male who incubates the eggs. The female is brighter colored than the male, unusual among birds. She goes off to feed once the eggs are laid, never to see them again, nor will she see the chicks when the eggs have hatched. In the warming air of summer, steam rises from the water, and hidden places in the tundra reveal remarkable patterns of color. On a rare calm day, the temperature may rise to 70 or 80 degrees, causing summer clouds to build up in the south. A summer rain can become harsh and cold in moments, the dark clouds blocking the sun's warmth. In a tireless slope, the Arctic fox prowls the tundra, searching for the eggs of birds which will be her primary food source while lemmings are scarce. In the manner of her kind, the sandpiper pretends injury, but stays always just ahead of the fox. Not far away, a hunting Jaeger also searches the tundra, for she too is a predator. She hunts mainly for lemmings, but is quick to spot the exposed eggs of the duck. Unable to carry the eggs away, she breaks them in the nest and feeds herself. But for her young, she must still find a lemming or baby birds that she can take back to her nest. Attracted by the Jaeger, the fox also discovers the duck's eggs. She will not eat them here, but remove them one by one to hide in scattered places nearby, returning to the nest again and again until all the eggs are gone. A rare peregrine falcon flies over to investigate. He is no danger to the vixen, although eagles may sometimes take foxes or their young. In the narrow band of space at the surface of the tundra, the temperature may be 20 to 30 degrees higher than in the air above. The vegetation traps and holds the sun's energy. This microclimate is favorable to the production of millions of insects. One harvester of these insects, the snow bunting, needs enormous numbers to raise his family. During incubation, the male fed his mate, and the urge is still strong. But it's the nestlings that he should be feeding now, little mouths which seem never to be full. The male alone returns to the nest with a catch every 5 minutes. He may bring 30 to 60 or even 100 insects by the beakful. Now, in the first week of July, eggs are hatching all across the tundra. The dunlin is restless, but faithful. The Baird sandpiper sits on her remaining eggs, while her first chicks explore. Sandpipers are precocious, baby chicks that can feed or walk as soon as they're dry. And when all the eggs have hatched, the family will abandon the nest. But the Lapland longspur chicks must be fed in the nest for about 10 days. Obedient to instinct, the parents bring food to the nest and tidy up afterwards. Now that most of the eggs have hatched, the fox must look to other sources of food. There will be lucky catches of birds, such as these immature ptarmigan. But she knows she will have to surprise them to catch one. So now her interest turns to ground squirrels. The Arctic ground squirrel is busy stuffing himself, trying to build up layers of fat, getting ready for the long winter. He is the only true hibernator in the north, and he's preparing for an 8-month nap. Cautious by nature, he is constantly alert for trouble. The caribou, like the ground squirrel, also feels an urgency to build up layers of fat. Born nomads, they are compulsive wanderers. Ungulate studies have revealed a part of why this is so. Biologists now know that the great caribou herds require vast areas, often over 600 acres per animal. This is true for all the Arctic herds, from Alaska to Canada to Greenland, Norway, and Russian Siberia. Their constant movement prevents overuse of any part of their range, as they move from south to north and back again, with the tide of the changing seasons. The carefree fox kits are young, inexperienced, dependent on their mother to feed them, unaware that they will have to feed themselves when winter comes. The lemming is only of passing interest to the inattentive youngster. If he were already on his own, or more experienced, he would be more persistent, but he wants only to find his playmates. The unconcerned kits squander their time completely. Yet, even in play, they are practicing skills they will need for survival. There are games of stalk and attack, chase and ambush, develop in them coordination and quickness. When winter comes, the foxes will be transformed with a coat of pure white, and the season of desperation will begin for them. It will be the final season for some. But for now, they frolic through the one season of their youth, content to be where they are, knowing no other alternative. Like a warning signal, autumn arrives in what seems to be the middle of summer. The luminous red proclaims an end to this short season of the year. Eagerly, the ground squirrel devours a few more bites. Their purpose completed, the restless birds feel a distant call. The circling sun each day has dipped closer to the horizon, until, for the first time in 10 weeks, it drops from view. Time is short. The Arctic summer fades away. The stinging wind from the top of the world will return the tundra to its accustomed white. The smoking snow will be the dominant force for 8 months, in a world that appears lifeless. But underneath this frozen exterior, life lies hidden, waiting for the return of another Arctic summer.